Oh, there you are, Sam. Where have you been for the last week? There's so much poker news and content to discuss here. Where have you been?
I was just in a hole the whole time, man.
Are you sure you weren't in Vegas?
I think I went to a city that had lost at the beginning. I think I might have gone to Los Angeles instead of Las Vegas.
I'm pretty sure I was there with you and I saw you in Las Vegas.
You sure?
Would I have Daniel Negreanu's autograph in my book here if I wasn't sure about it?
You have Daniel Negreanu's autograph, really?
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, you were there when I got the signature in the first place. Don't you believe me, man?
I guess I gotta believe you, but I mean, if you don't have the signature, then I can't believe you.
Oh, there is your signature right there, buddy.
There it is.
Welcome, everybody, to our very special post Las Vegas trip episode of the Two Fish at the Table Poker Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Legend of Ben One on Poker Stars.
And I am your other host, East Coast Sam. That's right. We went to the main event July 4th week, and now we're back to discuss how our trip went, what we saw, who we met, because it's not just Daniel Negreanu we met, but a murderer's row of terrific players. Some names you recognize, some names, if you've watched this podcast for long enough, you've recognized. But it was my first trip to Vegas, and I have a lot to share about it. It was Ben's second trip, and he has a lot to share about it. So get ready for this one. This is going to be a long one.
Yeah, as you know, we have been teasing this trip all year. Kind of a sequel to my original trip. We had a very well listened to podcast episode after my first trip, so it only made sense to go bigger and bring in not only myself but Sam, our other brother Nick, and his partner as well into the Vegas scene to sort of see the poker scene through new eyes. It's kind of like with Doctor Who when the Doctor tries to have the companion see something he's already seen through fresh eyes. It's fresh through his eyes, and so I don't want to take too much of the spotlight away from Sam. This is sort of his coming into the poker world. He had a lot of the same reactions and experiences and thoughts that I had, but don't take it from me. Take it from Sam. Take it away. When you first landed in Vegas, what was your thoughts on what you saw?
Yeah, so I've done a lot of world traveling. I've been fortunate enough to go to several countries in Europe. I've also been to Canada and different parts of the United States. I've been to Texas, so I have been to the deep south before, but I've never been to the southwest of the United States, beside Los Angeles and San Diego. We actually did go to Los Angeles. That wasn't a joke, Ben and I. So, flying into Las Vegas, which I did on July 4th at 9 p.m. or so, as I'm driving into the city, in my taxi cab, I'm thinking to myself, this is the fakest place in the world. This looks so cheap and tacky. I'm going to hate it. Oh my God, this is so terrible. So Nick Rose and I checked into our room at the Paris Las Vegas, which is where the main event was held this year. And it took us an hour to check in. First, we tried to use these kiosks and they were impossible. They wouldn't work. So then we finally go to the front desk. It took us 30 minutes to get to the front desk. And then when we were at the front desk, it was another 30 minutes to get our room because they were trying to find adjoining rooms for us. And it just went on and on and on for 30 minutes. So we finally get out into Las Vegas, actually walking the streets at about 10 o'clock. And Nick and Rose wanted to get ramen somewhere. So we're going over to get ramen. And we get lost going over to get ramen. Turns out that this place is within 5 minutes of where our hotel was. It's maybe 2 blocks away. It wound up taking us 30 minutes because we just went around the city like this. And so there I am, I'm jet lagged, I'm exhausted. I'm not really in the mood for ramen to begin with. Just walking through the city and I'm like going like, oh my God, this is going to be terrible vacation. But then I just started looking at the people. I started people watching as we were walking through and just all sorts of different people. I mean, every single type of person was there in Vegas on July 4th. And it just kind of took my breath away. And I finally became appreciative of Vegas. This is where everybody wants to go. This is where you just get this potpourri of people of all walks of life, of all backgrounds right here in the city. So I kind of got into it. And I thought it was nice to a certain extent. And we got our ramen at this little hole in the wall place away from everything. We were the last party to get into the ramen place because it was 10:45 at night. And it was a nice little, I had curry, I didn't have ramen. It was a nice little bowl of curry that I had. And we went back to the hotel and I was starting to feel happy again. I was starting to feel upbeat. I had a guy ask me if I wanted to go to a strip club. That was a lot of fun. And as I'm walking away from the guy, he goes, "They can braid your hair for you." And I'm wondering why he would say that. I mean, I don't get it.
I don't know.
Um, yeah, so go to bed on July 4th. wake up on July 5th, and I was up first before Nick and Rose was. And Ben wasn't here, by the way. So this is also part of the reason why I'm starting this off, is because Ben was still on the East Coast figuring things out. But you know, working as an RN, figuring things out. Anyway, so I go down to the cafe there's a bunch of cafes in the Paris, Las Vegas, and buy this $8 cup of coffee that was, you know, just really bad. And then I decided to go and see where the poker was being played. So I have a bunch of photos from Vegas. We'll try to share in some capacity, somehow. We don't know how the internet works. We've been on the internet our whole lives. We don't know how this stuff works.
Maybe on our Facebook page. I already shared some more photos that way, so that's probably the best.
Yeah. So anyway, I went to I guess you'd call it the main room within the Paris Las Vegas. There's the Horseshoe, and then there was the Paris Las Vegas, which are both in the same complex. So I went to the Horseshoe, which is just a bunch of tables. Not Horseshoe, the Paris Las Vegas, which is just a bunch of tables as far as the eye can see. It's about 300 tables all together. And as I walked in for the first time, I just kind of went like, whoa, like it took my breath away just seeing all these poker tables as far as I could see, and actually being in Las Vegas and being in the main event. Obviously this was 8 o'clock in the morning, so the main event wasn't happening. It was one of the smaller events, but I still walked around and I got a view of it. And I also noticed there were these massive screens all around the venue that were just showing different streams from pokergo, from just random main events. And this was just, it would be 2016 one day, and then you'd walk in, it would be 2019, and then another day it would be 2017. Very strange stuff. But anyway, that was kind of neat. So I got my view of that room, and then I looked at the map and I realized I had to go to the Horseshoe to see the rest. So I walked down to the Horseshoe and I see the main room in the Horseshoe, which is again kind of like the main room in the Paris Las Vegas, just a bunch of tables, couple hundred tables. And then I started to walk over to where the TV table, the feature table, was supposed to be. And I got a quick glimpse of it before a security guard told me to leave, so I had to leave. But it looked very cool from what little I saw of it. Didn't get to step into the room. So anyway, I go back to my room because, you know, nothing's going on. It's just, you know, side events. Nobody was in the main room in the Horseshoe, so I figured I'd just leave. And so meet up with Nick and Rose, and we kind of didn't really have an agenda for the morning or the afternoon. I mean, I was content to just kind of walk around a little bit. So we walked around the casino, Paris, Las Vegas, for a while. Something I didn't mention was when we walked into Paris, Las Vegas for the first time, Rose looked up at the ceiling and said, "Oh, this is an outdoor casino," because they have a mural of a morning sky up on the ceiling, and it really looks like the sun is rising. So, you know, it's just very strange to just walk into this place. Also, it's a smoking casino. So, you know, as somebody who lives on the East Coast and isn't used to places being indoor smoking places, that was very weird, and it hurt my throat a lot, but I eventually kind of got used to it. So anyway, we go back to near where the ramen place was. There's this like weird hole in the wall hot dog place. We have lunch there. We're waiting for Ben to show up. Again, just kind of milling around, you know, not really doing anything. Nick and Rose only wanted to watch so much of the main event. Adam Grossack, who we were on the rail for, wasn't there yet. So, you know, we kind of just are killing time waiting around for Ben to show up. And Ben finally does show up. And how many details should we provide about you arriving in Vegas?
Well, I'm going to confess a secret to you, Sam. Prior to even this trip starting, on Sunday while I was working, I developed a sore throat. So I was sick secretly. I kept it to myself. Maybe it was, I mean, it's pretty obvious, I think, but I was sick this entire week of this trip, from Sunday, 3 days prior to the trip starting, and through the trip. So it was just kind of like a frog in my throat, sore throat, not feeling great, you know, feeling like 80%, 70% sometimes. So I flew in on Wednesday, July 5th, that morning, early. I got up at 5 a.m. My flight was at like 8 a.m. The flight took a little bit longer than the expected. So the flight itself was about 6 hours. Mm-hmm. So I get into Vegas. It's the same flight that Adam is flying in on. And it's a very turbulent flight. During the liftoff or takeoff, I get very sick. I end up vomiting, and then in the middle of the flight, I have just about a dry heaving, and then towards the end of the flight, I vomit again. Luckily, they have these bags that let you, you know, yak into, and I didn't really have anything in my stomach. I just had liquids for breakfast, so I wasn't really losing anything. It was just sort of gastric juices. I know TMI biology there. So I'm not feeling great when I land. Luckily, I brought plenty of water with me in my checked bag. So I'm just drinking water. Adam and I are get to the hotel probably about 12:30 or so. He had a rental car, so we got that. It was very cool. We get to the hotel. Again, this is my first time seeing Paris, Las Vegas, besides some of Madisau's vlogs the last couple of years, where you can, the angle of the camera lets you kind of see the ceiling. So I knew to expect that. Obviously, having been to Rio, I expect to see the poker rooms at some point look similar-ish. I mean, as far as the layout and everything. We meet up. That first day in Vegas was the day of day 1C of the main event. And now I had watched the streams of day 1A and 1B prior to that day. So, again, nothing particularly viral or crazy from that. So I'm not expecting anything particularly crazy for day 1C per se. I know that Mike Niwinski is playing in day 1C. And I learned a little bit later that Daniel Negreanu was playing day 1C. So we have informal plans later to go watch the poker action after our afternoon's events, so that we can, get in, see if we can see Mike playing or Negreanu playing. I take a nap in the hotel room for probably about an hour and a half. I'm just so beat from the flight. I couldn't really fall asleep on the flight, so I'm really just still, sleep deprived from the night before, and obviously trying to shake off the stomach troubles there. So we go actually, our agenda is at, I think, 4:00, we see a magic show.
Yep.
So it's like 1.5 buildings over, attached to Planet Hollywood. So pretty close to Paris, Las Vegas. Great show. It's not really the time or place to discuss the show in particular, but we're very happy. I'm kind of like in this stomach limbo where after you vomit, you're not really hungry, and you don't really want to eat anyway. So you're kind of in this like neutral, caloric sort of state for a while. So, and again, I'm trying to hide that I'm not just sick from my stomach. I'm sick. So I'm kind of like trying to maintain a facade with our group here. And I do have this pretty regular cough. Like my throat was just kind of, it wasn't a respiratory cough. It was just a throat cough. So I don't know. I couldn't quite shake it all week. So after the magic show, I get some, crappy dinner from one of the places apparent and that Magic Mile shopping area. And then Sam, you get some food too. And then we decide, okay, let's go watch some poker action. My first time in the poker rooms for the trip. And I think your first time really seeing them playing in the main event during your trip so far. So we decide, let's go. I bring a mini backpack with my poker book, Deal Me In, that I got in Vegas 2 years ago, because I figure if I can get a signature or two from the player that's in one of the chapters on the back, that'd be pretty boss. And so I bring a pen, I bring the book, I bring a little laptop to follow along online to stay up on the news. And so we go. First, we kind of like do a little walk around I guess it's called the horseshoe room or something. I don't even know what it's called exactly. Just to see those tables in action. Again, on day one, nothing that I'm super attached to. We don't see Mike anywhere, but we do know that Negreanu is at the TV table, which is not in the big stage area, but it's in it's called the horseshoe table, which is what they use for the first couple of day one's contents. And then they will occasionally use that table for other events while the main event is going on the big stage in the main poker room. So we decide to go out there and look what we see. We see Negreanu struggling. He's got like around half, a little bit under half starting stack on day one. And there he is playing literally 10 feet from us. We get to be like right in there. Sam, how was that for you being there?
Well, first off, actually, while you were napping, I actually got to see some of the action. So this was actually a photo I took of the room, the Paris, Las Vegas room, if you can see, full of people. I saw Karai Aldemir playing a couple of tables back. I couldn't get a good photo of him. So this was about 1 o'clock in the day. So now we're into the action. And again, the impression that I got, it's a very strange sort of thing because you're behind this rope line. And again, I'm not railing anybody in particular. I'm not there for a specific person. So you're just kind of like standing there and nobody else is around and you're just watching this action. And every now and again, a poker player will just kind of like look over at you, kind of like this. It feels like you're at an aquarium and you're watching fish in the fish tank. It just has this very odd impression when you're just kind of standing there. So I milled around for about 20 minutes while you were napping, Ben. And then I left and went to the horseshoe room, and I actually got to see the table in action and all that. So this is what my view was as I walked in. So this is not the main event. This is the hybrid event that was played. So it was an online event, and then they played out the final table live in the horseshoe. And Sam Soverel was the headliner. I mentioned earlier the giant screens on which they were broadcasting different things. Does anybody recognize this guy right here? Kind of hard to see, but there he is. So it was Sam Soverel who was playing in this hybrid event. And I got there when they were about four-handed. And Sam Soverel managed to stay alive, get to heads up. This is a picture of the table when it was at heads up. Sam Soverel has stepped aside. They're on break at the moment. And as you can see right there in the middle, there's the bracelet, there's their stacks. And it was honestly quite a sight to see that, because even though it was an event I didn't really care about that much, it's like they're actually playing for a bracelet here. And there was a big hand where Sam Soverel managed to, I think, pick up 3 of a kind, while his opponent, who's sitting here, had 2 pair or top pair or something like that. And this guy tanked for like 6 minutes before he finally folded. And that was like the biggest emotional like response I ever had to a poker hand ever, for no other reason other than I was just standing right there watching Sam Soverel about to win a bracelet or not. And I'm going over the action in my head, and I'm like, is Sam Soverel bluffing? Is he not bluffing? Like, what's going on here? It was just so cool to see that. Something else that also happened while I was standing at the horseshoe table was, so they go on break. So it's Sam Soverel and the other guy heads up, they leave. And the woman over the loudspeaker says, everybody please leave, including spectators. So I start to leave, but then I noticed that nobody at the horseshoe table is leaving. So I figured, all right, I'll just stick around. And so what they wound up doing was a bracelet ceremony. So here's Jack Effel preparing the bracelets. And then they went through and they gave 3 bracelets to people. So here's one guy that got a bracelet. I can't remember what their names were, but I'm sure you can look at it online. They played the national anthem of each country standing while they were standing there. Here's another guy with a bracelet. And then here's the third guy. So it was actually really cool to see that happen. And they, their friends and their family would show up with flags. One guy had his like kid in a stroller and his wife was holding him. I thought that was really sweet. But anyway, enough kvetching about people you've never heard of. Daniel Negreanu, I actually got to see him. Yeah, I mean, my first impression of Daniel was this. Standing at the outer behind where the table was supposed to be. But then we actually went around and stepped inside, and I managed to get a better look at him. So we were pretty close to him. We were not exactly across from the table of him, but close enough that if we were to jump over the railing and like we were within 2 steps of him. And Daniel would, he's talking with the people at his table. He seems to be aware of everything that's going on. He would stand up and would kind of, talk to different people, take photographs and stuff. So Ben had his book with him in his bag, and he's sort of like itching to pull it out. We're kind of both trying to figure out, try to get Daniel's attention, try to figure out when exactly we can grab Daniel's attention. So finally, Daniel gets up and he kind of comes down. We were standing on sort of, it was kind of like this setup, and we're standing about here. So Daniel's kind of like walking around where my thumbs are, talking to different people. And then finally, Ben says, can I get an autograph from you? And so Daniel says, sure. And he signs the book. And Ben says, you gave us a shout out on your podcast once. Shout out for our podcast. And Daniel says, what's your podcast? And Ben says, the Two Fish at the Table Poker Podcast. And Daniel goes, what? Ben says, the Two Fish at the Table Poker Podcast. And then he laughs and kind of walks away and takes more photographs. And you can find this moment on the pokergo stream. And if you're listening very, very carefully, underneath the commentary, I can't remember who was commentating, you can hear Daniel and Ben's conversation because Daniel had a microphone on. So again, very, very faintly, technically speaking, our podcast was on pokergo. So that was pretty cool. And, Daniel was a super nice guy. I mean, everything that's been said about him is true. He really seems to like his fans. Also, he's, just, again, very engaging to watch, a lot of fun to watch. So it was fun.
Yeah, and he kind of laughed at me saying the name of the podcast. It was kind of a funny little pun, and I felt really good with that because he had a really rough day one. Like if you watch his vlog for that day, we're not in the vlog unfortunately, but he just could never get anything going on that table. Shelby Wells was the other prominent name at that table that we knew from her deep run in the main event last year. She ended up busting on day one despite having a pretty sizable stack at one point. I think she had like over like 120 or something like that at some point. She ended up busting. Negreanu just kind of was in that 20, 30K range the entire time that we were there. And really from like I think the final 3 levels onward from that day one. So still survive on day one. You survive day one, you can't win unless you survive day one. So, it's a start. And like you mentioned, Negreanu, a couple times he like gets pictures of people. I thought about the whole picture thing, but I felt like, an autograph would be kind of different,
Yeah.
rather than just have photograph after photograph. And again, I didn't want to push my luck as far as like how, like if he's already taken 2 photos, you only have so much time between hands or during a hand that he's not in. So there was a sort of a mental calculation of when to actually swoop in for the strike for the autograph. And I'm going to cherish it. Thank you, Negreanu, again for that. Thank you for again the shout out 2 years ago in our podcast. Thank you for I didn't actually expect to remember him saying copying our podcast, which is fine because you know what, he's just reading comments and whatever. But it was really cool, and it was a great appetizer for what was to come for a great week of poker world interaction. So we end up leaving the day 1C area after a little bit. We got our fill. Again, I'm still really tired, so I want to rest up because we have a very busy day 1D or that Thursday to come. So it's all about conservation of energy at that point. I'm again not eating a ton really. I just, again, because I'm just not in the best biology space at the time. So, but I do know that Adam is playing day 1D, level 1, minute 0. So that's one of the next hurdles for our trip. But also that next day on July 6th, we have a planned lunch with our boy Mike Niwinski at we pick a place inside the Paris Las Vegas building. So I was happy with that choice too. So that takes us into for me day 2 of my trip and day 3 for Sam's trip. I kind of sleep in because I'm just like exhausted. We have like 1 p.m. Lunch plan, so we're there for the very start of day 1, and then we're gonna have lunch, and then we're gonna come back and watch Adam the rest from there. So we get there to day 1D. Day 1D being the biggest of all the day 1s because there's the smallest break between day 1 and day 2. A lot of top pros do this, Hellmuth included. Again, the energy more or less the same as day 1C, just the field's bigger. They use multiple rooms, and so for me, again, this is the second time I'm there to rail Adam. For Sam, this is his first time. So you tell me, how were you feeling as day 1D was about to commence?
Yeah, so something I forgot to mention when I was going over day 1C was about 2 o'clock or so at the 2 o'clock break, I managed to beat the crowd back to the horseshoe room. So I watched a bunch of players come in. I'm not just talking about big names like Eric Seidel, Alan Cunningham, Sylvain Loosely, people like that. I'm talking about just hundreds and hundreds of people streaming in from the hall into the horseshoe room. I felt like Simba in the Stampede and the Lion King, just like clinging onto a leaf. I'm standing over by a pole, just like watching these hundreds of people come in. So I'm like, oh my God, this is going to be bigger tomorrow. And sure enough, it was. And, as I mentioned, watching Adam, Adam was luckily close enough that he was within sight of us and we could kind of exchange looks at each other. Here is the photo I got with him right as we sort of walked in. He's the guy in the blue shirt with the tan hat there. Right there. And, so luckily we managed to see him right as he walked in and started playing. And then we left to go have lunch with Mike at 1. And as I mentioned, there's a kind of, standing at the aquarium watching the fish pass by the glass quality when you're watching somebody. It was a bit different because I was with you, Ben. And also there were more people there standing there watching the event. But still, I mean, there's a slightly intrusive quality almost, especially because he's, again, 2 tables over. We had 1 table that was right in front of us of a bunch of fairly older players. I mean, there's maybe like 1 guy who was younger than 30 and then a bunch of like 50 plus people.
Yeah.
And that was actually a lot of fun to watch too. There was some crazy stuff that happened at that table. But yeah, I mean, Ben and I are poker aficionados. We're hobbyists. We love watching the game. So for me, it's very engaging, and there's, tension when Adam's involved in a hand. We don't know what his cards are. We don't know what his table mates' cards are. When he folds, what is he folding? What's he calling with? What's he raising with? Like, we don't know. We're also just far enough away that we can see the cards being dealt, but we're too far away to see what exactly the cards are. I mean, we're close enough to see the cards being dealt. We're too far away to see what the cards are. So it's just maddening. You're like, is that a 10? Is that a 9? Is that a spade or a club? You just don't know. So I enjoyed it a lot. Unfortunately, my back started getting in, but that's the
yeah. Around like level 3 of watching is when my back really started to hurt again. Which I don't know. I guess you're so tense, and I don't know. I'm wearing a backpack, so there's weight on my back. I don't know. It's funny you mentioned the whole like spectator thing, because you get a lot of attention as a spectator, not like overt attention. Like no one like talks to you usually, but people look around. They're like, "Why are you watching?" Like it's funny. There really aren't that many spectators that, as you'd expect. Like in football, the ratio of the spectators to the players is like thousands to one. You have like 100 players on the field. There's like 65,000 people in the stand. Whereas in poker, even in that main room on day 1D, you have thousands of players and maybe only like 30 or 40 spectators, at least at this point on day one early on. Obviously, around the bubble and later on, things increase in spectator size, especially when players are busting, so they become spectators after they lose. But I do think that you're almost kind of celebrities to the players in that, whoa, how are they still watching? Like, especially with us, we were very dedicated to watching Adam's day one. Like his table mates took notice of us, and Adam would talk to them about us. And even once or twice, some of them would come over and like say something to us as they were leaving on break or something. It's kind of funny. The very first hand of day 1D, there was this big thing with Moneymaker doing the shuffle up and deal with a friend of his that was the oldest player in the field. That took kind of a little bit, like 10 minutes, 15 minutes before the action started. And then Adam actually wins a very sizable pot in the very first hand. I believe he had like pocket tens on like a Jack 9 board. And he took about like 6,000 or 7,000 chips in that very first pot. And again, with a 60K starting stack and the blinds 100, 200, that's a pretty sizable pot. And it's not unreasonable to think that maybe he was chip winner for a minute there. You never know, given how big the pot was. So things are off to a very good start for Adam. Like you mentioned, there's one table between us and the rail and him, and he's actually the seat facing us, which is great because 2 years ago it was the same position from the rail, but his back was to me. So we see his face, we see when he has cards, we can see his stack, we can see if he's talking, if he's smiling or whatever. So it's actually pretty good, all things considered, if you can be in the table right next to the rail. So that was a good start.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he was chatting with people throughout. Again, we're just too far away to see what exactly he's saying. But yeah, I mean, people would be looking over at us. People would be, after when on break, players would obviously have to leave. They would, say things to us every now and again. It was, definitely interesting. And we weren't the only people who were there. There were a couple other people who were spectating. But yeah, I mean, this really isn't something that is intended for spectators unless you're at the feature table watching it, where there's a row of seats actually around the feature table where you can sit down on. Even though if you're sitting there, you can't see anything. So you really have to stand up in order to see the cards and the action being dealt. But yeah, I mean, I thought it was, definitely nobody was trying to kick us out. There were no security guards, watching us or anything. It was, definitely interesting. And then also on break, again, everybody leaves. It's not just the players, it's the spectators too, and they all fled out. So it gives you ample opportunity to see people as they walk by. And again, all sorts of, final tablists, old names that, Eric Seidel, people like that. So it's definitely an interesting experience if you're watching it. But yeah, poker at this point is intended to be played, not watched. And it would be nice if they could provide a few chairs for the spectators. Maybe, let us just bring in like little stools, just we can just sit and watch the action. That would be nice. But
yeah. And then this kind of took us into the next phase of our day because Adam gets off to a great start, So I'm relieved. He's got maybe like 67,000 chips or so right now. He's not going to lose it all in one level. So we can go relax and have our lunch with our boy Mike Niwinski. And so it's at this place called like Alexa, Las Vegas. It's just like a small restaurant area attached to Paris, Las Vegas, near the front. So we sit down. Mike arrives. I'm excited. I had looked up prior how his day one had gone, and I believe he had like 94,000 chips after day one. So again, very solid. I think most people would take that in a heartbeat if they were told they're going to survive day one of one and a half plus starting stack. So we sit down, and really for probably about almost 2 hours, this lunch is taking place. And Mike, just such a great guy. We go over a lot of topics. He meets Nick and Rose, who he doesn't know, obviously, and from there is a very enjoyable conversation. Which again, the ratio of us and him talking is mostly him, but that's okay. He's our guest. We want to hear him talk. We're not here to tuck his ear up. We're here to hear him talk. And so, what follows is a very enjoyable lunch experience for us.
Yeah, absolutely the nicest guy. Thank you again, Mike, if you're listening. Let's keep in touch. You were awesome. If you're ever in our area, let us know. We'll definitely treat you to something else. Yeah, absolutely just an awesome guy. Got to know each of us personally, would ask us questions about our lives, because Ben and I aren't professional poker players, so you got to learn a little bit more about what we do for a living. Just absolutely incredible lunch. And 2 hours just really well spent in this cafe in Vegas.
Yeah, and some of the things we talked about was how his day one went, how he was up and down. He was at like 110 and down to 80 and up to 90, and some of the bluffs he ran and sort of like getting a feel for the table and stuff. He talked about 2019 a little bit, about his day seven experiences, because he had watched our 2019 podcast, which we had not yet recorded as of our original interview with him. That was after our 2016 content. So we heard a little bit about him about that, and how the best episode of that season was his episode. I think episode like 11 or something like that, before the final table happens. And he talked about his personal life, about his love life, the legal documentations and processes of residence, and getting everything arranged for his family. And then also he talked about a couple of his other main event runs and some of the cash games we've been playing leading up to the main event. So again, just a great time. And I guess I know our couple of our party maybe was less appreciative of some of the topics, but I mean, it's just a great time, honestly.
Absolutely, yeah. And again, thank you. It's hard to know what to say. I mean, he broke down a lot of hands with us, talked about different spots he was in, talked a lot about also just being a poker player and what that's like. So yeah, it was very nice.
Yeah, and so while this is happening, Adam is still playing, of course. So we part ways with Mike. We wish him best of luck on day 2 ABC. We're probably not going to be able to watch him play because we have our own plans the next day. So we head back to the poker room to check in on Adam. And at this time, Nick and Rose do join us. They joined us before we left for lunch because we had a multi-group jacket matching ensemble. We all had Patriot jackets to sort of be like a Boston cheer squad for our boy Adam. We get back to Adam, I think, in the middle of level 2 or so because of the timing there. And Adam's table, he told us that he was actually pretty happy with the table. By the end of day 1, he was acquiring some pretty good reads on the situations. And even though he wasn't picking up, super premium cards, he was, maneuvering himself and hovering kind of in a above starting stack position for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the table here, this guy in the hat here next to him with the gray shirt on, this guy I called Bobbing Man because while he was in a hand, he would kind of bob like this, kind of back and forth like this. He had headphones on, so he was listening to music, but he kept being involved in hands with Adam, and we saw them clash. God, how many times? Like, it felt like 6 or 7 times they would just be at it in a pot. Adam would bet, and he'd see Bobbing Man just be like, and then he'd call the bet or something else. So I was getting just anxious about him. Like, is Adam getting run over? Because we can see the stacks, but again, we don't quite know what the dynamics are because we don't know what the cards are. So I'm like, oh my God, what's going on? Yeah, but it was, it was again fun to watch Adam play this out. Adam was communicating with us through texts, so that's how we would know about certain hands and things. He would text us every now and again. We never went up to the table and asked him what was going on. We never screamed his name or anything. We just decided to let him focus. So we had some information about it, but for the most part, it's this terrific guessing game of what exactly is happening, what is going on, and also just trying to get a read on the other players. What are they doing? The guy in the Elliott jersey, who's got his back to the camera here, I felt like he was pushing around a lot of chips. I felt like he was being a little bit more aggressive than the other players at the table. But I'm thinking that in my mind, and then I'm like watching him play, and I'm saying to myself, "Is that actually what's going on?" It's just playing these little mind games with myself was pretty fun.
Yeah, and for the most part, on that day one, the majority of my spectating was of Adams.
Yeah.
But I did drift around in that room a little bit just to see the other tables, see if I saw any players I recognized. I did see Kasuf at one point with a big stack, a few other players here and there. Just what you would imagine. There was actually one very funny moment in the table directly in front of the rail that I'm talking about. So I actually missed the first part of this. I think it was while I was walking around, I heard them say floor, so I was coming over there to see what was happening. And there was this guy in a Buffalo Bills hat that was taking offense to just some of the topics of conversation amongst the table, and was like telling the dealer and the floorman, like, they're talking about totally like nonsense. Can you just tell them to stop talking about it or talk about something else? And I don't know. I feel like you kind of just have to deal with it at that point. I mean, if 2 or 3 people are expressing something that you don't like, I mean, you're outnumbered. Just deal with it. But he was upset at them saying things, talking about things like politics or abortion or like the Jews are really rich or something like he was just like as if like you have any right to dictate what the conversation is. And so, and then they just kept with the dealer. They just kept kind of bringing it up, and she was like, "You guys gotta stop. Okay, we're gonna change the conversation." The ruling was, and it just felt so petty. And again, the fact that this old guy and he's wearing headphones, so I'm like, just tune him out then something, bro. It was really funny to watch though.
Yeah, it was very strange because they may be directly in front of us, but a lot of players are talking. There's also the sounds of chips, so you're not quite paying attention to, even though they're sitting directly in front of us, what they're saying. And also, I'm paying attention to Adam, so I didn't get a gist of the whole conversation. But yeah, like something about abortion and something about some anti-Semitic remark that somebody had made. I don't know. And yeah, I'm with you on this one. It's like people will talk about what they talk about, and especially on political issues and things like that, not to get political on this non-political podcast. You should just keep that to yourself. Try not to get frustrated, because if you show your frustration, if you start to tilt, they're just going to keep talking about that. So you really just need to keep it mum. A floor person did come over and essentially just say like, well, we can't impose any rules here. Nothing uncouth was said, so you're just going to have to move on and keep playing. And it kind of did, taper off after this. But yeah, it was a very strange moment. I was just standing there, and again, we're spectators and we're not on anybody's rail at the table, so I'm kind of like trying to pay attention, but also trying to not pay attention. Trying to seem coy, like I'm not quite watching. So I'm kind of like this, sort of looking away while sort of side-eyeing them. So that made it kind of a little bit more awkward. But yeah, it was just very strange.
Yeah, that was probably the most drama I really ever saw during this entire trip, which again I can still appreciate. It's just kind of funny. With as day one is progressing, every break we sort of have a quick post level debrief of Adam. How many steps does he have? How did it go? And the key term that I would really say for him is roller coaster. He'd be up and then down, up and then down. For the most part, this is something that he did not really have in his game much 2 years ago. Was he just had to bluff in every big spot that he was in. Like it never seemed like he had a hand to really, trap somebody with. He would detail that he was like a good 6 for 6 with bluffs on day 1D at his table, just very successful bluffs. Every now and then he would text me. Just had a big bluff, won a big pot. He would say "What? Remind me to tell you about the ace-10 bluff or the 4-3 bluff," and then he'd tell me later. And again, it did seem like his table might have been playing kind of scared poker, which was good because I got the sense that maybe ever so slightly that he maybe was a little bit scared poker 2 years ago in that original run. Obviously, he ran it to day 3 at a big stack at one point, but in the back of your head, you're kind of like, is he really winning these chips, or is he just sort of, the aces versus aces hand? Is that why he's doing so well, or is he outplaying the table? In this case, it definitely felt like he was in control of the table when he entered a pot, and so that was good to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, he would let us, again, we wouldn't know that he was bluffing at the time. He would tell us afterward. And he definitely seemed comfortable. He didn't seem like he was nervous about anything or anything else. So it was, it was good to see him play and remain comfortable and confident. We didn't have dinner with him on this day because he had plans, and Ben decided to take a nap in the room and just kind of get our energies together for the rest of the day. So we didn't get to talk about him super in depth on that day, but he would just let us know little things and pick up little things off of it. So that was nice.
Yeah, I didn't keep a record of like his chip stack after each level. It was kind of it was up and down. So it was pretty much between like 60 and 100 or so K all day.
Mm-hmm.
So as day one was continuing, like level 4, level 5, watching him, I think you stopped watching around level 4's end. I think you hung in.
At the end of level 4, I went to the room.
Yeah, for level 5, I intermixed watching Adam and watching the TV table on pokergo with Hellmuth playing, and so just to kind of keep things fresh, my back was really hurting from all the standing, and so Adam, you could definitely see on his face the signs of fatigue, which I was a bit concerned about because it's only day one, and this is sort of when you have to be the most fresh, and you only get one day off tomorrow before it's just the marathon continues. But Adam is hanging in there doing pretty good. He's a very chatty guy at the table. Like Adam's a very charismatic guy. Very friendly, extroverted. So he's commonly talking at his table. There was at his 9-hand table there was 2 ladies, one on his direct right, and then 6 other gentlemen at the table. I think his table only had 1 bust out. The entirety of day one, or 1 or 2. Very, very, very little drama in that respect. So for the most part, the chip average of the table is about 60K less one bust, and it gets up to like 66K. So Adam's above the table average, which you would expect on day one when you're up a bit. And so as day one is winding down, I'm trying to count his stack, because if you can count the red 5Ks and the green 25Ks, that's pretty much the majority of their stack. Adam did at one point have a very tall stack of the yellow 1K, so that was pretty good to see. And then I did spend a little bit watching Hellmuth play at that table for a bit. And Hellmuth, he was up pretty sizable with like 1 level to go in day 1, and then lost a bunch towards the end. So we ended the day with about 100,000, so still pretty good, but he obviously has high expectations. I get back to Adam's room right as I'm in the hallway as they're backing up, because obviously you can't be in the room as a spectator during that. I find him, he tells me he ended day one with 85,000 chips, which, not flashy, but, it's more than what he's had the last couple of day ones in this structure. So I was very happy with how things looked. With the blinds going to be 400, 800 on day 2. So that's over 100 big blinds, very workable. I think he was happy with it. His bluff success rate was 100%. And he didn't really make too many like bad recalls, I think 1 or 2 the whole day. So I was pretty optimistic with things going into day 2.
Yeah, same here. I mean, when you told me that it was at 85K, I figured, all right, Mike was at 94K. So, again, it's not, it'd be nice for him to double up and have 120K, but that's still a manageable stack. It's still plenty of big blinds to maneuver on day 2. And speaking of this guy, Hellmuth, who you've brought up a few times. So it's about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I decided I have to go get something, run back to my room and go grab something. It's about 20 minutes left in level 2. And I see this huge group of people in the hallway, and I'm like, what on earth is going on? And I stand on my tippy toes and I take this photo. I'm like, I wonder who that is in the background in the hat. I wonder who that is. There's all these women standing in the hallway with signs that say up to 17. Who is that right there? It was Mr. Phil Hellmuth preparing for his walk-in to the horseshoe room. And I filmed the entire thing, his walk all the way in. Not perfect video, but still, decent enough, close enough that you could see Mr. Hellmuth. And a certain gentleman named Jungle Man dressed up as a gorilla in a cage that he was pulling along. We'll upload the video. You can see the whole thing. But yeah, there he is with Jungle Man standing with all these reporters here. And that was, quite a sight to see purely by accident. I just happened to be walking by and there it was. And I texted Ben, I'm like, Hellmuth's about to make his entrance. And so Ben was able to see part of it. He also just saw me running down the hall with my camera filming the whole thing. So that was pretty cool to watch that. Hellmuth is, say what you will about him, he is ever the showman, and he knows how to bring a show to Vegas. So it was pretty cool.
Yeah, and ironically, Jungle Man's table was in the same section as Adam, so I was able to watch. Yeah. He was still playing like most of his costume. It was pretty ridiculous. And I had met at Jungle Man my last trip to Vegas, so it was kind of cool to see him again in a big spotlight. Hellmuth's table was actually in the same room for a little bit before we got moved to the TV table, so not too much was really to be seen at that point. It's good there. And I can't believe we totally forgot to mention on day 1C during the pokergo stream, there was a good like 15-second straight clip of just us in frame during the sort of dead space of the broadcast. You can see me. I'm wearing a mask because I cut my side shaving, so I didn't want to have that in public. But that was pretty cool to be just on screen with you together, represent the podcast on that pokergo night. And so we're not. I'm. That was really kind of the extent of you being on the stream. I would have a few more moments under the cameras there, but that was also something I wanted to not forget about that too.
Yeah, well, you can see me on the stream. It's just it's this the whole time. You can see me in the background standing. I was standing directly behind Sam Soverel, so when he's heads up, you can see me, and you can also see Ben and I intermittently throughout day 1. I think we're on 1C, yeah, because that's Negreanu, and day 1D. Just again, just our stomachs, and I think I'm actually wearing the same shirt, so it's this blue shirt here. So that was kind of neat. Not that we were trying to be on camera or anything. We were just there to watch. I thought about holding up a little, like writing in one of my notebooks, something like 2 fish at the table and holding it out. But I figured that they would pick that out because they were going through the horseshoe table, and anytime somebody pulled out their phone to film, even for 5 seconds, there would be somebody who would come up and say no filming. Like, it was insane. Like, how could they figure this out? They figured it out. So I figured I'd probably get kicked off the table if I did that. So
right. Do it. And so with the day 1D all concluded, there wasn't quite, I think at this point, enough contestants in the main event to say it was the biggest one yet, or maybe it was at this point. It might have been actually.
I think they figured out it was going to break the record. So yeah.
But I think of late reg, they hadn't hit the 10,000 mark yet. All the late reggers got them over the 10,000 player hump for day 2. So day 2 ABC, it's Adam's off day. So by extension, it's kind of our off day from poker. Obviously, Mike's playing, but we're not watching him. So we have some other Las Vegas activities plans. We do an escape room, very fun. We go to Area 15, this place called Mega Mart. Interesting, but not quite maybe a slam dunk of a
I loved it, but that's just me.
No, I mean I have my own. That's again different topic, different time. But and then we have a very enjoyable dinner with Adam, and then we get a chance to late that night do one final brotherly walk through the poker area together during the main event action. So again, I'm kind of playing I Spy with Sam with the table players. Jack Sinclair at one point, for example, I say, "Oh my God, Jack Sinclair!" He kind of looks up and I say, "Oh, good luck." So that was kind of cool. Because again, like in a zoo, animals can't like respond to their name and look up at you, whereas in this case they can. So it's a little bit different there. They had a great table with fake money that you could like pose with as if you won a bracelet. So we took a few photos of that. So that was pretty cool. And again, I don't have a shot by shot recollection of every player we saw at the tables. I have other memories of other players that I'll go into at some point. But again, it's just really cool to see these players, see who's still in, see who has a big stack, who's trying to hang in there. I think on day 2 ABC at the TV table, I think it was Doug Polk at the main table that night, I believe it was. Really kind of the 2 big stars for the majority of these streams was Doug Polk and Nicholas Rigby. And so Doug Polk, in this case, was spotlighting it here with a pretty sizable chip stack during the duration of his stay in the spotlight. So that was good to see. Luckily, with day 2 onward, They move on from just that one little horseshoe table with cameras around to the big stage. And with the big stage, you have, as spectators, free access to sit wherever. You also can stand on sort of the perimeter of the spectator area, so you can kind of get close to the action. And so I did take up the opportunity to sit in that area whenever I could during the next couple of days. That was fun. And again, it's kind of that night was the last night that we would all be in Vegas together, because from that point onward, it's just me and Adam versus the world at that point.
Yeah, I flew back on Saturday morning, so Ben wasn't there. Unfortunately, Ben had to check out of we were sharing a room together, check out of the room just to check back into the room because I was leaving.
Yeah.
But luckily we got that all worked out, and I flew back home while Ben got to see everything else. Yeah, I mean, my time in Vegas was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed watching the main event. I would definitely like to watch the Bumblebee Burst. I would like to watch a lot of other stuff besides just day one. So hopefully next year we can, if we go back next year, we can try to work the schedule out so we can see more of it. Because even if Adam busts early on, I want to see, the Money Bubble Burst. I want to see the action that's, for example, going on right now, day 6. So.
That's right. As we speak right now, the main event is entering the early phases of day 6 of like 150 players or so left. I forget, I think 140 or so, with a few ladies left in there. That's good. So what you mentioned, you guys leave on the morning of day 2D. I think it's important we discuss at this point the quality of those pokergo / YouTube streams. Actually,
yeah, sure.
Really, they're the schedule itself. They were pretty good at then taking the YouTube streams and putting them on pokergo afterwards, so that you can watch the whole thing. They would kind of for those first couple of days, they would usually just have a YouTube broadcast of the first portion, and then cut to pokergo for the rest. So you kind of give the people a taste of what they could see under past a paywall, and then go from there. For the most part, it's the same guys in the booth. The production quality, everything pretty much has settled into the usual routine, with maybe a new name or two in the booth here or there. I don't know. Jeff Platt's still in the field. Kara Scott regularly talking to players as well. I don't know. It's fine. I was pretty happy. I've been pretty happy with the streams for the last couple of years. Honestly, I think they usually get some pretty good action and some pretty good players at those tables. I'm not sure what you think though.
Yeah, I mean, they need to broadcast the main event from start to finish, in my opinion. I think they should just do it for free. This is the big event that everybody wants to see. You can get plenty of donations and ad revenue off of it, and merch sales too. Yeah, I mean, it's fine. I think that the commentators should step back on occasion and let the talk at the table be playing out. They should, maybe go a little bit more into hands and spots. Maria Ho's pretty good at this, that she can go into spots and explore what she would do and talk about strategy a little bit more. Yeah, it's fine. I don't have any major problems with it. The big problem that I have with pokergo is just telling us when streams will occur and sticking to their schedule, because you go at 4 o'clock ready to watch a stream, and then all of a sudden, oh, we've delayed it to 7 o'clock, and there's no reason provided. I think that's just odd. But yeah, I mean, it's fine. I'm glad that people can watch at least some of the main event for free, but I think the whole thing should be for free for us personally. I understand it has to be on a 1 hour delay. That's totally cool. That's no problem. But just give us a little bit more.
It's fair enough. I mean, for the most part, it's Nick Schulman, Ali Najad, Renko, Lon gets in there. No Norman Chad, though. That's my surprise.
Yeah.
I was surprised Maria Ho gets in there. With the table selection, again, you have during the day 2 onward, they have the usual main table, secondary table, and then that third table has no cards or chip graphics or anything, which again, I'm still not a fan of that. I'll never understand why they continue to do that, especially since they have the horseshoe table, which has the RFID and everything. So you have the technology, you have the latitude to even just have 3 tables ready to go. I don't understand why you don't just continue to have each table get to the same level of detail. I mean, for the most part, they every like 20-30 minutes they'll go from table 1, table 2, and then go back, with the occasional penning at table 3, with again the occasional outer tables coverage, which I'm okay with that balance actually. But when you then cut to table 3, just let me see what the cards are more clearly. That's my only gripe really with that.
Absolutely.
And as per usual, you have the usual big stacks pan to maybe notable celebrities or athletes of other professions in there, past main event champions, and this year in particular, it definitely felt like it was the return to form for a lot of these past champions, particularly the kind of classic mid 2000s, the Moneymaker through Gold quartet there. I was pretty happy with their overall performance in this main event.
Yeah, Hashem was the last remaining champion. He busted yesterday, but still managed to collect a decent stack. Seemed a little unhappy when he busted, but aren't you always unhappy when you bust the main event? Unfortunately, there's not too many big names going into action today, and I haven't been checking the updates to see if they've busted yet. But really, like Nate Silver's the only who's the 538 guy. Speaking of politics again, is the only one he's got like 27 bigs to start the day, which is manageable, but you definitely need to chip up. Rigby's down. Richard Seymour busted yesterday. Chance Corniff busted. There's a lot of sort of big names that are no longer in the field, and unfortunately, not too many of these unknown players really stand out to me. So I'm really going to have to research them and see if I believe in them.
Yeah, I haven't right now gone through the whole list of players and seen how many horses I have left. I mean, there's a few ladies left in there, so I'll root for them, of course. There's a few other players like Rigby that I'll root for. But again, I'll kind of reevaluate that when I formally watch the day 6 content a little bit later today. So again, this is kind of the turning point of the trip here with that morning of Saturday, July 8th. Because from here, it's all me. It's my own thing. We're at about 1 hour into this podcast. So I was actually thinking, Sam, we could sort of, if we had a cliffhanger here, I'm going to leave you hanging. Because why don't we wrap things up here for Vegas Trip 2, Part 1, the cliffhanger. And our next podcast, we will resume the trip from when you left onward, and we can discuss days 2, 3, 4, and 5 of the main event at the same time.
Yeah, I'm way ahead of you. We can do that. I mean, after all, the stream has started. Coverage for the main event is going on, and I'm curious to see what's happening. So yeah, I mean, absolutely. Well, you can finish the rest. I have some details about what happened to certain people. We won't name names, but it'll be a cliffhanger for all of you sitting at home, maybe.
Yes, and again, there's a lot more stories that I want to go over that I'm going to surprise you, Sam, with that I have not told you yet. So this will be fun. But until next time, guys, enjoy your poker today. Enjoy your TV today. Enjoy your poker TV at the main event today.
Watch the main event, folks. It's getting tough.
Bye, guys.
Bye.